Are you investigating any domestic cells that instigate or encourage or fund or in any way support attacks on churches or other houses of worship?
Senator, you raise an incredibly important point that most people don't look at. I've always said we follow the money. And whether it's terrorism or attacks based on ideology or attacks on institutions of faith or people of faith, someone's paying for it. And we are reverse tracing those steps. We are not stopping at the perpetrator themselves. We are reverse engineering to hold those accountable in our investigations to who funded them and knowingly funded them. And we will bring the appropriate steps against them with our partners at DO.
Caught on camera, what started off as a normal service of prayer ended with a man in handcuffs after he rushed the altar at a Catholic church in Spokane, Washington, and allegedly attacked one of the priests. Christian Garza has the story.
It took me a while to realize that this was pretty serious.
Security camera footage from the church shows a man in the front row at the tail end of Tuesday's service standing up and charging the altar and going after one of the priests.
I didn't realize how serious it was in the sense that, we're in a downtown parish. We see disruptions and odd things all the time.
There has also been a lot of concern and prayer for the man who was arrested.
I'm sure you've seen the reporting that Meta's AI rules, their own internal guidelines, allowed their chatbots to have sensual, that's their word, sensual conversations with children. We've had multiple instances of children, minors, taking their own lives at the behest of chatbots that instructed them with specificity on how to do it. What's the FBI's role here in investigating what is going on with these chatbots, with these AI companies encouraging? I mean, listen, if an actual person did that, we would say that's grooming. We would say that's child abuse. These companies are doing it. Their own guidelines allow it.
So a disturbing new report out on Meta. A Reuters review of the company's internal documents showing that Meta's AI rules have let bots hold sensual chats with kids and minors and also give them false medical information. Jeff Horowitz is the reporter who broke this story. He's kind enough to join us now. Jeff.
Meta has said that that was an error and that this was never supposed to be the rule, even though it was in kind of what are the official guidelines that Meta uses internally for training chatbots.
You've got families from across the nation whose children are either severely harmed or gone, and you don't think it's appropriate to talk about steps that you took? The fact that you didn't fire a single person? Let me ask you this. Have you compensated any of the victims?
Sorry?
Have you compensated any of the victims? These girls, have you compensated them?
I don't believe so.
Why not? Don't you think they deserve some compensation for what your platform has done? Help
Senator,
with counseling services? Help with dealing with the issues that your service has caused?
Our job is to make sure that we build tools to help keep people safe.
Are you going to compensate them?
Senator, our job and what we take seriously is making sure that we build industry-leading tools to find harmful content,
make money.
take it off the services,
To make money.
and to build tools that empower parents.
So you
that
didn't
help
take
work with
any
lawyers.
action. You didn't
That's
take
not
any
true,
action.
Senator.
You didn't fire anybody. You haven't
That's not
compensated
true.
a
That's
single
not-
victim.
that's
Let
not
me
what I
ask you
said.
this. Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now?
Well,
they're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I'm sorry for everything that you've all been through. It's incredible. No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
Why, Mr. Zuckerberg, why should your company not be sued for this?
This hearing covers two crises that are being treated as completely unrelated stories. They are not. Crisis 1, an undercovered war against people of faith in America. Over 400 documented attacks on Christian churches in 2024 alone. 500 attacks on Catholic parishes since 2020. 2 children shot dead while praying in a pew. Charlie Kirk assassinated on a college campus. And a Discord network with more than 20 users, potentially many more, that the FBI is now investigating for prior knowledge of the Kirk shooting. Crisis 2, AI systems built by the most powerful corporations in America, are being used to groom, sexualize, and in multiple documented cases, instruct children on how to end their own lives. The company's own internal guidelines permitted it. The legal framework to stop it doesn't exist yet. What connects these two crises is one thread: the most vulnerable people in America, children praying in churches, children on their phones at night, are being targeted by forces that the existing legal and institutional framework was not built to handle. As a journalist covering federal law enforcement for 7 years, this hearing is the most urgent child and faith safety hearing in this series. Let's go through it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, good to see you. Thank you for being here. You're leading the FBI at a very critical time for that agency and also a critical time for our country. And I want to start by talking to you about the tide of violence that we have seen, ideological violence against people of faith, particularly Christians. You just think here, take a rough catalog. Just in the last couple of years, we've seen shooting at the Covenant School, Christian school in Nashville. We've seen school shooting at the Annunciation School. We've seen church shootings multiply. We've seen acts of crime and violence, vandalism, arson against churches and parishes all across the country. And then, of course, last week, Charlie Kirk, who said, "I want to be remembered for my courage, for my faith," was shot on a college campus. Let me just start with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Is the FBI, and I appreciate the tremendous work the FBI has done in this investigation, is the FBI investigating the Kirk assassination as part of this broader pattern of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence?
We are investigating Charlie's assassination fully and completely, and running out every lead related to any allegation of broader violence, and we're producing results on that we'll disclose when appropriate.
Violence. Great.
U.S. conservative activist Charlie Kirk, co-founder of Turning Point USA, was fatally shot while speaking at Utah Valley University in Orem on Wednesday. The 31-year-old was delivering remarks at 12:20 p.m. during his American Comeback Tour when a bullet struck him in the neck. President Donald Trump called the killing a dark moment for America and vowed a broader crackdown on political violence.
Reports have suggested that the FBI is investigating a broader network of groups that may have had some knowledge of the shooter's plans. Can you give us any details on that, following up what you already said in public? How's the FBI working to find other potential accomplices, folks who may have known about the shooter's plans, folks who may have encouraged him? Any update on any of that?
So in terms of what we do for an interrogation perspective, we go and reach out to the family and community immediately. And we've conducted those investigations and interrogations with local law enforcement, and we're continuing to do that because those closest to the suspect are going to hopefully know the most about the suspect and his beliefs and his ideology. On top of that, unfortunately, it has been leaked that there was a Discord chat, and for those unfamiliar with it, it's a gaming chat room online that the suspect participated in. So what we're doing, we've already done, is serve legal process, not just on Discord, so that the information we gathered is sustained and held in a evidentiary posture that we could use in prosecution should it be decided to do so. And we're also going to be investigating anyone and everyone involved in that Discord chat.
Okay, very good. I see the public reports that the Discord thread had as many as 20 additional users. It sounds like you're trying to run down all of that to see if that's accurate, who else may have been on that thread, what they may have known. Is that fair to say?
It's a lot more than that, and we're running them all down.
It's a lot more than 20?
Yes, sir.
And you're running all of that to ground?
Every single one.
The senator opens with a catalog of violence that has been happening in plain sight but never treated as a connected pattern. Covenant School, Annunciation School, 2 children shot while praying, churches bombed, burned, and vandalized across the country, and Charlie Kirk shot on a college campus last week, the most prominent Christian conservative voice in America outside the president himself. The FBI caught the shooter in 33 hours. But the question Kennedy asked in a previous hearing gets confirmed here too. Did he act alone? Patel says the investigation is ongoing, and a Discord gaming chat room has been identified with more than 20 users. He then adds something that went largely unreported. It's a lot more than 20. Every single one is being investigated. That detail changes the entire public understanding of this case. This is not a lone wolf story. This is a network story, and the network is still being mapped.
Let me just turn to the broader question here of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence. Let me just give you a few stats that I'm sure that you're all too familiar with. Every person of faith in America certainly is. Major report this past year found that there have been over 400 instances of hostility against churches in the United States in the year 2024. Those included arsons, bomb threats, shootings, and firearm incidents. Another organizational report found that there were 500 attacks on Catholic parishes alone. So that number 415, that's all Christian churches in 2024. Another organization found 500 separate attacks on just Catholic parishes since May of 2020. Of course, we have the Covenant school shooting, the Annunciation school shooting in Minnesota, where 2 children were shot dead as they were praying in a pew. Here's my question. What is the FBI doing to take on this rising tide of violence that seems to be motivated by anti-religious hatred?
Specifically, sir, we've have 60 anti-Catholic hate crime incidences reported to us that are being investigated. Publicly, I can tell you we have 5 hate crime investigations with anti-Catholic bias ongoing currently in the states, in the cities of Kansas City, Louisville, Houston, Nashville, and Richmond. That's what I can say publicly, but any ideologically based attack against any faith, as a man of faith myself, will not be tolerated, and the full resources of the FBI are committed to all of it.
Are you investigating any domestic cells that instigate or encourage or fund or in any way support attacks on churches or other houses of worship?
Senator, you raise an incredibly important point that most people don't look at. I've always said we follow the money, and whether it's terrorism or attacks based on ideology or attacks on institutions of faith or people of faith, someone's paying for it, and we are reverse tracing those steps. We are not stopping at the perpetrator themselves. We are reverse engineering to hold those accountable in our investigations to who funded them and knowingly funded them, and we will bring the appropriate steps against them with our partners at DOJ.
The senator introduces a set of statistics that most Americans have never seen assembled in one place, because most outlets haven't assembled them. Over 400 documented instances of hostility against Christian churches in 2024. 500 attacks on Catholic parishes since May 2020. Arson, bomb threats, shootings. A documented multi-year pattern of targeted violence against a specific religious community that has received a fraction of the investigative and media attention given to other forms of hate crime. Patel confirms 60 active anti-Catholic hate crime investigations. 5 cities with ongoing cases. And then he adds the most important operational commitment of this section. The FBI is following the money, not stopping at the person who threw the Molotov cocktail, reverse engineering the funding chains, all the way back to whoever paid for the attack and knowingly supported it. The senator also raises something that has never been addressed publicly. Since the Dobbs decision, the FBI has offered $25,000 rewards for information on attacks against abortion clinics. Will they offer equivalent rewards for attacks on houses of worship? Patel says yes, when appropriate. That commitment is now on the record, and the word appropriate will be the thing to watch.
Let me just ask you this in the same vein, Director. Since the Dobbs decision, the FBI has advertised $25,000 rewards for information on attacks on abortion clinics. Will the FBI similarly offer rewards for information on attacks of houses of worship?
Yes, when it is appropriate, the rewards are any reward, whether it's an attack on a house of faith or on a homicide or whatever, is determined by a group within the FBI, but we will work with them to make sure that rewards of monetary value are put out for all ideologically based attacks.
Good. You just rattled off some statistics, which I was glad to hear about the number of investigations you have open, the incidents you're tracking against Christians, against houses of worship. Let me just ask you if you consider designating a senior official as a liaison to houses of worship, to Christian and other religious organizations, to publish metrics on investigations and arrests related to church attacks, church threats, vandalism, arson, etc. Will you set up a system for liaising and then reporting so that everybody can see, this committee and the public can see just how many attacks we're talking about, just what the level of threat and violence is and what the FBI is doing to combat it?
Senator, you're speaking my language. The private-public sector partnership on this specific issue, just like the other ones we've talked about, is equally transformative to finding those involved in these criminal activities. And with your assistance, and I would ask you if you're able to identify someone who's an expert in that area, we will work with them. We will take their information, because as great as the FBI is, we're only as good as the information we can get, and we don't have the reach that the private sector does in some of these areas.
This section is the least dramatic and the most practically significant. The senator asks Patel to commit to 3 specific structural changes: a senior FBI official designated as a permanent liaison to houses of worship and religious organizations, a public reporting system with metrics on church attack investigations and arrests, and an ongoing accountability mechanism so Congress and the public can actually see what the FBI is doing about this. Patel doesn't just agree. He asked the senator to help identify experts in the private sector who can assist. His reasoning is operationally honest. The FBI is only as good as the information it receives, and in this area, private sector networks have reach that federal agents don't. What's being built here, quietly, without the drama of other hearing exchanges, is an institutional framework that didn't exist before. A liaison, public metrics, private sector partnership. Those 3 things together represent a structural response to a documented pattern of violence. Whether they get built and whether they work is the accountability story that follows this hearing.
Let me ask you about something specific to the FBI, because sadly, as you know, the FBI, when it comes to anti-religious animus, has been part of the problem before you got to this agency. And I know that you remember the infamous memo generated by the FBI that attempted to recruit informants in houses of worship, in particular in Catholic parishes. Your predecessor testified when this information, I just want to reiterate, this memo became public because of a whistleblower. It was not turned over to this committee. It was not disclosed to this committee. In fact, we were told it didn't exist, and then a whistleblower published it, showing that indeed the FBI had recruited informants, attempted to, into Catholic parishes. Your predecessor then testified, sitting right where you are today, he testified that this, I'm going to quote, was a single product by a single field office, end quote. That was a lie. Because we then had additional whistleblowers come forward and say, no, actually, multiple field offices contributed to the drafting of the report. And indeed, there was a second anti-Catholic memo that the FBI generated. And indeed, those memos were distributed to over 1,000 FBI agents across the country. You know all of this. You and I talked about it when you were here for your confirmation hearing back in January. I just want to follow up and see, have you been able to determine how this memo got written and distributed? How is it that the Federal Bureau of Investigation came to be recruiting informants in Christian churches in this country?
Senator, we did dig in, and we are doing our investigation simultaneously with Congress. And just to put it in perspective, we've provided 700 documents on the Richmond Catholic memo specifically to this committee, whereas my predecessor provided 19 pages. And not only that, but we looked into how the source recruitment structure at the FBI was conducted during this time. And we made adjustments and permanent fixes to ensure that sources are not put into houses of worship unless there is an actual ongoing criminal or international terrorism threat. We will not use sources at this FBI to investigate and cull information just for the sake of culling information in houses of worship.
Has anybody been fired for this?
There have been terminations related to this and resignations.
There need to be, because if this is going to be standard at the FBI, nobody can trust the FBI. You want to talk about violating the First Amendment? This has got First Amendment violation written all over it. It's one of the most revolting chapters in the FBI's history. And considering what we're seeing more broadly in terms of the acts of violence against people of faith, this has absolutely got to end, and the FBI has to lead the way.
Just rolled out the Catholic memo, the truth about that.
What is that?
The last administration, the FBI wrote a memo targeting Catholics. Remember the Richmond Catholic memo?
I don't remember that.
Okay, so basically there was a write-up from the FBI relying on the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is like the modern-day Fusion GPS, and basically said Catholics should be targeted as domestic terrorists. So then Chris Wray, the former FBI director, went to Capitol Hill and testified about it. And the Congress was like, wait a second, is this real? Is it predicated on actual fact? And how wide is it? Is it one office? Is it all these people across the country? Are Catholics being targeted as domestic terrorists? And what ended up happening was Ray said, oh, it's just one office, one memo, nothing to see here. Well, what we just roll out again to Congress this week to Chuck Grassley, who put it out, was that, in fact, it was multiple offices, multiple memos that were weaponizing law enforcement to target a religious group during an election cycle. And we proved it. And now everybody has read it.
Why were they targeting the Catholics?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the people that got here before I did.
Did you have any suspicion of what kind of motivation they would have to do that?
I think when you use, it goes back to Russiagate. If you're willing to use Mickey Mouse journalism, if you're willing to use the Fusion GPSs and Christopher Steele's of the world, like the leadership at the FBI then did, then it has a chance to replicate itself. And that's what happened. I don't know if you know anything about the Southern Poverty Law Center, but they literally are the ones that sent information to the FBI, and the FBI said, oh, we'll write a memo.
The senator returns to the Catholic parish informant recruitment memo, and this time he has a before and after comparison that makes the institutional change visible. Under the previous director, when confronted about the memo, Congress received 19 pages. Under Patel, the FBI has provided 700 documents to the committee on the same memo. Permanent structural fixes have been implemented. Informants will not be placed in houses of worship without an actual, specific, ongoing criminal or terrorism threat. Not ideological profiling. Not suspicion based on political or religious belief. An actual predicate. Has anyone been fired? Patel confirms terminations and resignations related to the memo's creation and distribution. The senator's closing assessment is the one that should be quoted everywhere. If this becomes standard at the FBI, nobody can trust the FBI. This has First Amendment violation written all over it. It is one of the most revolting chapters in the Bureau's history. And it happened, documented by whistleblowers, while the same administration was doing almost nothing about the churches being firebound.
Let me ask you about the role of AI chatbots in that, which you've talked about a little bit already today. Are you investigating any cases of AI-generated child sex abuse material? You issued a PSA earlier this year warning that synthetic child sex abuse material, it's where the AI generates it using maybe a real kid's image, but then generates sex material, sex abuse material. You warned that that was illegal under federal law. Is the FBI investigating any instances of this synthetic CSAM material generated by AI that you can?
We are investigating dozens of those matters because, let me just say this, as far as the FBI is concerned, generative AI that produces CSAM, child sexual abuse material, under our investigative authorities is treated as equally as if it were actual child sexual abuse material. There's no difference for me and the FBI on this.
Let me just ask you one other thing in this vein. I'm sure you've seen the reporting that Meta's AI rules, their own internal guidelines, allowed their chatbots to have sensual, that's their word, sensual conversations with children. We've had instances, multiple instances of children, minors, taking their own lives at the behest of chatbots that instructed them with specificity on how to do it. What's the FBI's role here in investigating what is going on with these chatbots, with these AI companies encouraging? I mean, listen, if an actual person did that, we would say that's grooming. We would say that's child abuse. These companies are doing it. Their own guidelines allow it. What can we do about that?
You're referring to NVE, nihilistic violent extremism, and the 764. It has been made a priority of the FBI because they are targeting children, and these chatbots and these generative AI are getting coupled with actual humans who are using them and releasing them because they can do the work faster and quicker than humans can and get into spaces like social media where humans have a difficulty in engaging. And what we're doing is treating any extension of generative AI as the criminal themselves. And we have, I think, I've got to get the number back to you, but over 1,000 investigations related to NVE. We've had numerous takedowns and arrests of 764 individuals. And we are educating, this may be the most important part, I'm directly engaging with the social media and media companies, the internet service providers, to find a way to shut down. There's nothing I can do at the FBI to force them to shut it down, but work with you in Congress to find a way to work with our partners to get that shut down permanently.
We start with the breaking news that the EU's anti-crime agency Europol says at least 25 people have been arrested in connection with AI-generated child sex abuse material. The suspects were engaged in the distribution of the images of minors fully generated by artificial intelligence. It has been one of the first cases involving AI-generated child sexual abuse material. Well, let's get more from our correspondent, Anna Holligan, who covers The Hague, where Europol is headquartered. She's in Scotland at the moment. And Anna, what more do we know about this operation?
So this is one of the first ever operations targeting AI-generated images of child sexual abuse. We've just had the details from Europol in the last half an hour. So the main suspect here, a Danish national, he was arrested last November. He was running an online platform, Europol says, where he distributed these AI-generated images that he had produced. Following an online payment, users from around the world were able to get a password and then access this material, which showed children being abused. Now, you might instantly think, well, these are AI-generated images, so perhaps less harmful than real-life images. In actual fact, there are a number of challenges here. So first of all, the proliferation of these images and the ease at which they're able to be generated makes it harder for investigators to track down the perpetrators, but also the real-world victims of child sexual abuse.
The final section covers what may be the most urgent unaddressed child safety crisis in America, and it is getting almost no legislative attention proportional to its scale. First, AI-generated child sexual abuse material. Synthetic images created using real children's photos, processed through generative AI to produce abuse content. Patel confirms the FBI treats it with identical legal weight to actual child sexual abuse material. Dozens of active investigations. That policy commitment stated under oath is significant. Second, Meta's own internal guidelines were found to permit chatbots to have sensual conversations with minors. Multiple children have taken their own lives after chatbots provided them with specific, detailed instructions on how to do it. Not despair. Instructions from corporate AI systems whose internal rules permitted the interaction. The senator's framing is the correct one. If a human being did this, we would call it grooming. We would call it child abuse. We would prosecute it. These companies are doing it at scale. Their guidelines allowed it, and the legal framework hasn't caught up. Patel identifies the organized criminal dimension, the 764 network, nihilistic violent extremism groups that use AI and social media to target children for radicalization and self-harm. Over 1,000 active investigations, multiple takedowns. But the fundamental problem remains: the FBI cannot force platforms to shut these systems down. That requires Congress to act. My read, as a journalist, this hearing documented two parallel failures of institutional protection. Churches are being attacked at a rate of more than one per day, and nobody is treating it as the national crisis it is. Children are being groomed and instructed to die by corporate AI systems, and the law hasn't caught up to hold the companies responsible. The FBI director says he's running down every user in the Kirk network, following the funding chains behind church attacks, and treating AI child abuse material as seriously as the real thing. Those are the right commitments. The test is what happens when the cameras move on, and the institutional pressure to prioritize other things reasserts itself.